Atlanta had a heartbeat on Friday nights. You could feel it the moment the sun went down. The city exhaling all the weight of the week and breathing in something electric. Downtown pulsed with it. The streets shimmered with it. And on this particular Friday, standing outside one of Atlanta's most exclusive nightclubs, in a midnight blue sequin dress that caught the light like she was made of stars, was a woman named Brenda. She was 22 years old, breathtakingly beautiful, her brown skin luminous under the neon glow of the entrance lights, her short finger wave pixie haircut sitting immaculate against the perfect geometry of her face. She stepped out of the Uber with the quiet confidence of a woman who had long ago learned that the room would stop when she entered it. She didn't perform it. She didn't try for it. It simply happened. Every head that could see her turned. The doorman opened the velvet rope before she even reached it. His nod wasn't professional courtesy alone. It was involuntary admiration. The kind you cannot train out of a person. Brenda walked through without breaking stride. Her stiletto heels found the marble floor inside, and she moved through the entrance hall like water finding its path. Natural, inevitable, and impossible to stop. The chandelier above the entry exploded her dress into 1,000 small points of light. People noticed. They always noticed Brenda. Inside, the club was alive. The bass sat beneath every surface. Laser lights carved through smoke-filled air in blue and violet. The dance floor pulsed with people. The DJ elevated on his glass platform like a conductor of something ancient and urgent. Brenda stood at the edge of the dance floor and let the music find her. She always felt most herself inside music. She scanned the room slowly, took a breath, and smiled to herself. Tonight felt like something. She didn't know what. She didn't need to yet. Across the club, in a white leather VIP booth elevated just enough to see everything, 3 men were settled in with champagne and easy conversation. In the center was Sean Jae, 29 years old, extraordinarily handsome, Korean, with a light complexion that seemed to collect light rather than absorb it, a sharp jawline that could cut glass, and dark eyes that held everything they saw for longer than most people could bear. You were all black. Tailored. Effortless. To his right was Thomas, his older friend, mid-30s, also Korean, with curly hair and the kind of sharp mature face that made him look like a man who had already won every room he walked into. Thomas wore deep burgundy and wore it like a declaration. And to Sean Jae's left was Marcus, confident, well-built, 31 years old, a black American man who had the kind of presence that made people feel safe just being in his orbit. Marcus wore crisp white and said everything twice, once with his mouth and once with his grin. It was Marcus who spoke first about something inconsequential. Some story Sean Jae had already half forgotten by the time it ended, because somewhere in the middle of Marcus's story, Sean Jae's eyes drifted across the club and found Brenda standing at the edge of the dance floor. He stopped. Not dramatically. He didn't drop his glass or stand up or point. He simply stopped moving for 3 full seconds, which is an eternity when you are a man who never stops moving, and looked at her. Her dress shimmered under the lights. Her silhouette was extraordinary. Curves that made the air around her look like it had been designed specifically to contain her beauty. Her face was extraordinary. Even from across the club, across all that noise and light and smoke, her face reached him. Thomas saw her next. Of course he did. Thomas had sharp eyes, he always had. And whatever Sean Jae noticed, Thomas noticed too, and sometimes sooner. His dark gaze found Brenda on the dance floor, and settled there with the kind of deliberate interest that Thomas never wasted on the ordinary. He turned his champagne glass slowly between his fingers and watched. There was something about her that even Thomas, a man of considerable restraint, could not look away from. And then there was Marcus. Marcus, who watched both his friends go still in the same moment, and felt the story beginning before either of them had moved a single inch. Marcus leaned back in the booth and raised his glass to no one in particular, and smiled the slow, wide smile of a man who understood completely what was happening, and found it deeply, profoundly entertaining. 2 men. 1 woman. 1 night. And Atlanta had a way of making sure that nights like this one ended somewhere nobody expected. When Brenda began to dance, the conversation around her didn't stop, but it shifted. People made room without being asked. She moved with natural rhythm that went deeper than technique. Her body found the music the way some people find water, instinctively, gratefully, completely. Her midnight blue sequin dress moved with her like liquid. Her short finger wave pixie haircut caught every strobe of light. She closed her eyes for exactly 4 beats and let the music own her fully. And in those 4 beats she was the most beautiful thing in the room. Sean J set his champagne glass down very deliberately on the table. Then he stood up. Marcus looked up immediately, that grin already forming. Thomas watched from the side with an expression that was slightly harder to read. Sean J straightened his shirt. He ran one hand briefly through his hair. He was not nervous, not exactly, but he was something new. The booth's light fell across his sharp jaw and his dark eyes as he looked across the club toward Brenda. And there was a quiet decision living inside that look. He moved through the crowd the way confident people always do. Not aggressively but with a certainty that parted people naturally. The lasers cut across his path. The bass moved through the floor beneath his feet. Ahead of him, framed in light, Brenda danced. He kept his eyes on her as he moved. The distance closed. The noise of the club seemed to recede slightly, the way it always does in the moments that matter, as if life itself turns the volume down so you can hear what is important. She turned, and their eyes met. Just like that. In all of that noise and light and heat and music, in a club full of beautiful people and manufactured desire, 2 people found each other across the distance, and the world went still for 3 seconds. Brenda stopped mid-movement. Not because she was startled, but because his eyes were so direct, so unhidden. He was not performing for her. He was simply looking at her with the full honesty of a man who had never learned how to pretend he didn't feel exactly what he felt. That directness arrested her. She was not accustomed to being seen so completely by a man she had never met. He reached her. He stood before her on the dance floor, and he extended his hand, open palm, unhurried, without the performance most men brought to moments like this. It was simply an invitation. Simple and complete and terrifying in its sincerity. Brenda looked at his hand. Then she looked at his face. She registered several things simultaneously. That he was extraordinarily handsome. That his eyes held nothing performative. That his jaw was incredible. And that something about this man was entirely different from every other man who had ever crossed this kind of distance to reach her. She took his hand. Their fingers interlaced, his light complexion warm against her brown skin. The club lights painting them both in blue and gold. And both of them felt it. That electrical cellular recognition that some people spend their whole lives waiting for and never find. They danced. Not expertly, not for anyone watching, but with a naturalness that was more intimate than technique. He moved well. She moved beautifully. The distance between their bodies reduced gradually, conversation by conversation, smile by smile, the music giving them permission to be closer than strangers are supposed to be. Around them the dance floor continued, but within their small orbit, something private was already forming. Back in the VIP booth, Thomas watched. His champagne glass was full and untouched. His expression was the controlled, measured kind that covered more than it revealed. He watched Sean J dance with Brenda, and he felt something move through him that he would never name out loud. She was extraordinary. Even from here she was extraordinary. And she had chosen to take Sean J's hand. Thomas was a man of restraint. He would maintain his composure. But the composure was doing real work tonight. Marcus looked over at Thomas and said nothing. He didn't need to. His grin said everything that was appropriate and several things that were not. Thomas caught the look, held it for a moment, then exhaled slowly through his nose and allowed a reluctant ghost of a smile. Marcus raised his glass in a private toast to the universe and turned back toward the dance floor. Sean J leaned close to speak in Brenda's ear over the music. His face was very near hers. She could feel the warmth of him. He said something that she was not expecting, not a line, not a performance, but something genuine and slightly self-deprecating and surprising in its honesty. She felt the words land. And then she laughed. A real laugh. The kind that arrives from somewhere below self-consciousness and takes the body with it. Her head tilted back. Her full lips opened. Her short finger wave pixie haircut caught the light perfectly. It was the most beautiful laugh he had ever heard in his life. It was free and unguarded and completely, devastatingly real. And Sean J stood there watching her laugh, and felt something in his chest that he had never felt before in a nightclub in Atlanta or anywhere else. When the house lights rose at the end of the night, warm amber replacing the blue-violet drama of the dance floor, something had already changed. The crowd began to thin. The music slowed. Brenda and Sanjay were still talking near the dance floor, close together in their own quiet world. Marcus stood a few steps back with his hands in his pockets, and his satisfaction written across his entire face. Thomas stood slightly apart, looking at them once and then deliberately away, his hands in his pockets and his expression composed and clean. 3 very different experiences of the same evening. One story that had just begun. At the club entrance, under the amber of the overhead lights, Sanjay held out his phone. The screen glowed between them. He looked at her with his dark, sincere eyes and asked for her number with the same unhidden directness that had characterized everything he had done since he crossed the dance floor to reach her. No performance. No fake. Just the quiet certainty of a man who knew what he wanted to ask for. Brenda looked at the phone. She looked at him. And then, with a slow, gorgeous smile that she could not have stopped if she tried, she took the phone from his hand and typed her number in. He paid her nothing that night. He never paid her to dance. That part of the story was always someone else's misunderstanding. What happened between Brenda and Sanjay on that Friday night in Atlanta was simply 2 people seeing each other. Truly seeing each other, for the very first time. And that, it turned out, was more than enough to begin. While watching this and feeling something, click the subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. The morning arrived in Sanjay's apartment the way good mornings do, slowly, with light, pressing itself through the gaps in the curtains and laying itself gently across white linen sheets. He woke up already smiling, not the half-conscious automatic smile of a pleasant dream, but the full intentional smile of a man who knew exactly why he was smiling and chose to keep doing it. He reached for his phone on the nightstand. Her name was already saved. He'd saved it the moment she finished typing it in, and handed the phone back to him at the club entrance. He had not been subtle about it. In her own apartment across the city, Brenda stood at her bathroom vanity in a cream silk robe, and looked at herself in the mirror with the particular expression of a woman doing inventory. She freshened her short finger wave pixie haircut with practiced efficiency. She applied lip gloss with the slow deliberateness of someone whose thoughts are elsewhere. Her phone sat on the vanity counter face up. She kept not looking at it, which is the clearest possible indication that she was always looking at it. She had not been this unsettled by a man in a very long time, if ever. There was something about the way Sanjay had looked at her, directly, without apology, without performance, that she was still turning over in her mind like a stone she'd found and couldn't put down. He typed the first text sitting on the edge of his bed, elbows on his knees, the Atlanta morning light warm at his back. He typed it, deleted it, typed something else, considered it, then went back to a version closer to the first one, because the first one had been more honest. He was a man who had learned to say what he meant. It had taken time to learn that, but he had learned it. He sent the message, and then sat very still for approximately 4 seconds before standing up and walking to the kitchen to make coffee. Her phone buzzed. She picked it up with elaborately casual speed, leaned against the window, and read the text. The morning light came through the glass and landed on her face and her short finger wave pixie haircut, and her brown skin in the most beautiful way, and she read those words, and the smile that arrived on her face was the private kind. The kind that belongs to no one else, that happens in empty rooms, that a person would deny having made if asked. She read the text again. Then she set the phone face down in her lap, and looked out the window at Atlanta and exhaled. It was a good morning. Marcus called before the coffee was ready. This was entirely expected. Marcus had the instincts of a man who always knew when to call. Sanjay answered on the second ring, and was immediately subjected to the kind of interrogation that is disguised as casual conversation, and fools absolutely no one. He answered every question with the patience of a man who had chosen his best friend carefully, and was prepared to pay the ongoing price of that choice. By the time the coffee was poured, Marcus had extracted every detail from the previous night, delivered a full assessment, and issued a ruling. The ruling was, in its entirety, favorable. Thomas's morning was quieter. His apartment was always quiet. Sleek, dark surfaces, clean lines, the kind of place that required nothing from you and gave nothing away. He sat at his kitchen island with black coffee and looked out at the Atlanta skyline with the composed stillness of a man doing private accounting. He was not angry at Sean J. He had never been angry, not truly. What he felt was more subtle than anger. It was the peculiar, quiet grief of a man who sees something beautiful and understands almost immediately that it was not meant for him. He had seen Brenda first, in the sense that his eyes had registered her at the same moment as Sean J's. But he had done nothing with that moment. And Sean J had done everything. That distinction mattered to Thomas. He was a man who believed in consequences, and the consequence of inaction was always someone else's action filling the space you left empty. Saturday afternoon arrived sunny and warm, the kind of Atlanta October day that feels like the city is trying to extend summer out of pure generosity. Brenda arrived at the upscale mall in a caramel tan ribbed crop top and high-waisted cream wide-leg trousers, her curvy figure breathtaking under the natural sunlight, her designer crossbody bag small and effortless on her shoulder, her short finger wave pixie haircut gleaming. She was shopping alone, which she preferred. She took her time. She noticed things. She was in front of a boutique window when she heard her name. She almost heard it before it was spoken. Sean J had not planned to be at this mall. He had planned to be at a completely different errand across the city. But Marcus, who was with him, had suggested this particular mall for reasons that were later revealed to be entirely manufactured, delivered with absolute straight-faced conviction, and executed with the precision of a man running an operation. They had been walking through the main atrium, Sean J in sage green linen and off-white trousers, Marcus in his clean black polo and caramel chinos, when Sean J turned and saw her. The universe has its own sense of humor, and it has excellent timing. He stopped walking. His whole body stopped. Marcus walked 2 steps beyond him before realizing and turning back with an expression of theatrical innocence that convinced absolutely no one. Sean J stood in the middle of the marble atrium and looked across the width of the beautiful hall to where Brenda stood near a storefront in the morning light, and something warm and undeniable spread through his chest. She was even more beautiful in daylight. The club had been kind to her, but the afternoon sun was reverent. It sat on her like a compliment. Marcus's hand found the back of Sean J's shoulder and pushed. Not hard. Not enough to stumble. Well, almost enough to stumble. Sean J caught himself and turned to look at Marcus with an expression that was equal parts exasperation and laughter, and Marcus stood there in his black polo with his arms spread, and an expression of pure cheerful zero apology, and said the words that Sean J already knew were true and had needed to hear anyway. Go. Now. Before she moves. Brenda turned from the boutique window to adjust her crossbody bag, and found Sean J walking toward her across the marble floor. Her brain registered several things in rapid succession. His face, which was just as extraordinary in daylight as it had been in the club's blue light. His walk, which was unhurried and certain in the specific way of men who are never performing certainty, because they actually possess it. The sage green linen shirt, perfectly fitted. The silver bracelet, she hadn't noticed that the night before. She removed her oversized sunglasses from her face, and pushed them into her hair, and let him reach her. They stood face to face in the daylight for the first time. The club had been loud and dark and electric. The mall was bright and real and unambiguous. There was nowhere to hide in mall lighting, and neither of them particularly wanted to. He said hello. She said it back. He smiled first, that genuine warm smile without calculation, and she laughed at something he said in the next 30 seconds, and the sound of her laughing in daylight in this ordinary place was so much better than in a nightclub that Sean J filed it away carefully in whatever part of himself he was using to store things about her. They walked. There was no decision made about it. It simply happened. The way things happen when 2 people are moving in the same direction, and neither is willing to be the one to stop. Side by side along the luxury storefronts, her caramel crop top and cream wide-leg trousers effortlessly beautiful, his sage green linen easy and clean. The 2 of them in easy conversation that moved through several topics without effort. The way conversations do when both people are actually interested in the other person rather than managing an impression of interest. Marcus drifted behind them at a respectable distance, which is to say approximately 15 feet, doing absolutely nothing that looked like surveillance and doing it poorly. Inside a boutique, Sean J found a dress on a rack that stopped him. Emerald green satin slip style, elegant and simple. He held it up with one hand and turned to Brenda with his eyebrows raised in a playful question. She took one look at the dress and at him holding it and laughed, stepping backward with both hands up in amused protest. He stepped forward. She stepped back. He tilted the dress slightly toward her. "Just try it," he said. It was the world's simplest sentence, completely insufficient to explain why she went and tried it. Inside the fitting room, Brenda stood before the mirror in the emerald green satin slip dress and went completely still. The fabric draped over her incredible curves like it had been designed with her body as the single blueprint. The color against her brown skin was something profound, something that went beyond fashion into a quieter territory, the kind of combination that makes a person understand why artists choose certain colors over others. She put one hand on her hip and looked at herself for a long private moment. The dress fit her like a decision. She stepped out of the fitting room and Sanjay looked up and went still. Not the polite compliment about to be delivered still. The actual still. 3 full seconds of complete unself-conscious honesty, in which his expression held nothing but the bare truth of what he saw, which was a woman so beautiful in that dress that his very prepared vocabulary briefly deserted him. He recovered. He said something. She will later tell her best friend that what he said was the most sincere and unpracticed compliment she had ever received in her life about anything. At the checkout counter, before she had reached for her own bag, his black card was already on the glass. The boutique attendant began wrapping the dress in tissue. Brenda turned to look at him with a hand on her hip, and an expression of delighted surprise that she was not bothering to disguise. He looked over at her with a calm, quiet smile that said only, "Of course." They found ice cream in the mall's artisan food court, handmade waffle cones, unusual flavors, the kind of place that exists as an argument for slowing down. They sat across from each other at a small round table, and Brenda laughed because her ice cream was immediately problematic, and Sanjay handed her a napkin with the timing and efficiency of a man who had been watching her carefully enough to know it was coming. She accepted the napkin with narrowed eyes and a smile, and said that was very convenient. He said, "I pay attention." She held his gaze for a moment too long, and then looked back at her ice cream cone. Across the food court, leaning against a structural pillar with his arms folded across his chest, and a wide grin that was visible from several stores away, Marcus watched. He watched the two of them at that small table, leaning toward each other without knowing they were doing it, laughing at small things, building something out of nothing in the most ordinary beautiful setting, and he felt something genuine and warm move through him. He had pushed Sanjay forward in that atrium, because he knew his friend. He knew what Sanjay needed before Sanjay could articulate it. True love, Marcus had always believed, didn't arrive in extraordinary circumstances. It arrived in mall atriums and food courts and ordinary Saturday afternoons. You just had to be paying attention enough to show up. In the parking structure, golden afternoon light cutting through the concrete levels in warm dramatic shafts, they walked slowly toward Brenda's car. The white boutique bag swung from her hand. Neither of them was walking fast. Neither of them was in any hurry. When they reached her car, she leaned back against the door and looked up at him, and he leaned one arm against the roof above her head, and they talked for another 15 minutes in a parking garage about nothing important and everything that mattered. This is how love begins in real life. Not in grand gestures alone, but in parking garages on Saturday afternoons, in the soft weight of not wanting to leave yet, in the simple and terrifying truth that the ordinary world has never felt so extraordinary as it does when this particular person is standing in it. He had her number. She had the dress. They had Saturday. And the story was only beginning. There is a particular kind of getting ready that is different from every other kind, and Brenda knew immediately which kind this was. She stood before her full-length mirror in the emerald green satin slip dress, the one Sanjay had picked from the rack at the boutique, the one she had seen herself in and gone quiet, and she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time before a date. She felt genuinely nervous. Not the performative nervousness of pretending you don't care. The real kind. The kind that lives in the chest like a small warm bird that hasn't decided yet whether to fly or settle. She put on small gold hoop earrings. She applied deep berry lip color with the careful precision of someone who wanted everything to be right tonight. Not for him but for herself, because she wanted to walk into the evening feeling exactly as beautiful as she was. She looked at herself. The dress held her beautifully. Her short finger wave pixie haircut was perfect. Her brown skin glowed under the vanity light. She picked up her small clutch and walked to the door. Across the city, Sean Jae stood in his bathroom mirror and understood that tonight was different from other nights. He had dated before. He had been to beautiful restaurants and walked along rivers and said the appropriate things at the appropriate times. He was not new to this. But something about Brenda made him want to approach tonight as if he were. He dressed carefully. All black satin button-down, tailored charcoal trousers. He fastened his cufflinks with the same deliberateness he brought to important decisions. He looked at himself in the mirror for a long moment and thought, "Don't ruin this with cleverness. Just be honest. Just be here." He checked the time. Then he went to get his car keys. He was leaning against the car when she appeared in the doorway of her building. The black Mercedes at the curb. Him in all black against it. And then Brenda in the emerald dress, stepping into the golden late afternoon light, and the effect was instant and complete. He straightened from the car. He had expected her to look beautiful. He had known she would look beautiful. But knowing a thing and then standing in front of the fact of it are entirely different experiences, and Sean Jae stood on that sidewalk in front of her building and felt the difference move through him entirely. He crossed to the passenger door and opened it for her without a word. No annoncement, no theatrical flerische. Just a door held open by a man who believed that small things said large things. Brenda stepped close to the car, looked at the open door, then looked at him, and the expression on her face, quietly and involuntarily impressed, slightly moved, and doing her best not to show either, was one of the most beautiful expressions he had ever seen on a human face. Atlanta at night through a car window is one of the most beautiful things in the world if you are in the right company. The city lights blurred and streaked across the windshield in rivers of gold and white. Sean Jae drove with one hand on the wheel and the other on the gear shift and said things that made Brenda laugh, and she sat in the passenger seat in the emerald dress and laughed in the way she had laughed at the club, freely, genuinely, without guarding it. And the interior of the car was warm with the specific warmth of two people who are becoming something they haven't named yet. The restaurant was everything a first real date restaurant should be. Beautiful without being intimidating, intimate without being presumptuous. Warm light spilled from inside through the large glass windows. Lush greenery flanked the entrance. A uniformed valet appeared. Sean Jae placed his hand at the small of Brenda's back as they walked toward the entrance. The lightest possible touch, barely there, and she felt it through the satin of the dress like a word spoken quietly in a crowded room. Inside, the restaurant was candlelit and warm, dark wood and exposed brick creating the intimate atmosphere that made every conversation feel like a confidence. The maitre d' led them to a corner table. Brenda settled into her chair and looked across the candlelight at Sean Jae's face and thought, "This is a real person. This is a real man sitting across from me being real." That sounds simple. It was not simple. In her experience, it was quite rare. He told her a story about his first week in Atlanta 3 years ago. A story that involved a navigation app, a wrong turn, a very small dog, and a misunderstanding at a car wash that escalated far beyond what car wash misunderstandings typically do. And Brenda laughed so completely that she had to set down her wine glass before she spilled it. She threw her head back. Her short finger wave pixie haircut caught the candlelight. Her full lips opened wide over her beautiful teeth. The candles painted her in gold. Sean Jae watched her laugh and thought, "Whatever happens after tonight, I will remember this. This laugh in this candlelight." Somewhere between the appetizers and the main course, their hands ended up very close to each other on the white tablecloth. Not touching, just close. The kind of close that requires both parties to have made a quiet mutual decision without speaking it. Both of them aware of the proximity. Both of them choosing to maintain it. He told her about Korea. Not the polished highlights reel version that people offer strangers, but the real version. The city where he grew up, the sound of it, the food, his grandmother's kitchen in the early morning, the particular quality of winter light in Seoul. He spoke about it with the unguarded affection of a man who has been far from home long enough to understand what he carries with him. His dark eyes were warm and open, and Brenda sat across from him with her chin resting in one palm, and felt the rare privilege of being someone a person is choosing to be real with. And then she told him about herself. Her dreams. Not the cautious edited version, the full version. The things she wanted, the life she was building, the dancer she had been and the woman she was becoming. The gap between who she was in public and who she was when the room was quiet. She spoke with her hands. She watched his face for the polite glazing that happened when men decided they had pretended to be interested long enough. It did not come. Sean J. leaned forward on his elbows and listened to her the way people listen to music they don't want to end. The waiter arrived with a chocolate lava cake. They both looked at it at the same time and then up at each other with the exact same expression, delighted and surprised in the same proportion, and broke into laughter simultaneously. Two people, same reaction, same moment, no plan. Just the natural consequence of two people beginning to exist at the same frequency. After dinner, the Atlanta Riverwalk received them. The city lit the sky. The river carried those lights doubled. The promenade was lined with soft string lights in the trees. They walked slowly. There was no rush. There had been no rush all evening. It was the particular luxurious, unhurried quality of a night that both people understand is something. He took her hand. Not dramatically, not as a statement. Just quietly, naturally, his hand finding hers the way water finds the lowest point in a landscape. She looked down at their joined hands and then up at him. And neither of them said anything, and both of them slowed their walking slightly. At the railing, they stopped. The Atlanta skyline reflected in the dark water below. The sound of the city was distant and soft from here. They stood side by side and looked out at the light on the water, and she did not need to fill the silence, and he did not offer to fill it, and both of them understood that this was a rare and beautiful thing between two people. The ability to be in quiet together without anxiety. He turned and looked at her profile. The line of her jaw. The curve of her neck. The short finger wave pixie haircut against the city lights. The satin of the emerald dress at her shoulder. He looked at her the way people look at things they cannot believe are real, and are afraid that looking too directly will dissolve them. She turned and found him already looking. Their faces were very close in the night air. The city lights behind her made her glow. His dark eyes were entirely unhidden. Neither of them looked away. The space between them became very small. His face tilted down slightly. Her face tilted up. The whole world went quiet in the specific way it does in the moments just before something irreversible and wonderful. Their lips were impossibly close. She stepped back. One small deliberate step, with a smile on her lips that was more beautiful than any kiss could have been in that moment, knowing and warm and entirely in control and entirely unafraid. He stood for a moment in the surprised and utterly charmed aftermath of being genuinely played by someone genuinely wonderful. And then a quiet laugh escaped him. At her building, she stood in the entrance doorway and turned back toward him. He stood beside his car and watched her. She looked at him across the distance with her hand on the door handle, and the most beautiful slow smile on her face. A smile that said, "Tonight was real, and I am not afraid of what comes next." He watched her go inside. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment in the quiet aftermath of the evening. Then he got in the car and drove home through the Atlanta night. Smiling for the entire duration of the journey, they fell into mornings together the way seasons fall. Gradually, then completely. Coffee became their ritual. The artisan cafe on Ponce de Leon with its exposed brick and warm Edison bulbs became their place without anyone declaring it so. Brenda arrived in a dusty rose blazer and matching wide-leg trousers and walked through the door, and Sean J. was already there. Cream cable knit sweater, 2 coffees, the corner table. This is how love builds its architecture. Not in the grand moments but in the morning rituals that begin to feel like oxygen. They talk the way people talk when they are genuinely interested in the interior of another person. Not performing conversation, having it. Moving through topics without agenda. Laughing at things that were only funny to both of them. Comfortable in the silences between. Thomas called on a Tuesday morning with the particular casual tone of a man who has rehearsed his casual tone. He said he was just checking in. He said he hadn't heard much from Sean J. lately. He said these things with the measured control of a man who was saying something else entirely beneath them. He stood at his apartment window in his deep navy turtleneck and looked out at the city and conducted a phone conversation that was, underneath its surface, a very careful negotiation about a woman neither of them mentioned by name. Sanjay stood outside the coffee shop to take the call, his cream sweater against the October air. He listened to Thomas carefully. Sanjay had known Thomas for 8 years. He understood the frequency of Thomas's voice in the way long friendships do. Not just what was being said but the thing being said underneath. He listened with the steady composure of a man who was not going to be moved by subtext, and was not going to acknowledge the subtext existed. He was kind. He was warm. But he was clear. Marcus heard everything 2 days later on his leather couch. He leaned forward with his elbows on his knees and listened to Sanjay recount the call, and he processed the information with the systematic thoroughness of a man who took friendship seriously. He had watched Thomas at the club. He had clocked the look. He had noted the jaw tightening. He had filed it all in the part of himself that tracked things worth tracking. Marcus leaned forward and pointed directly at Sanjay with the kind of absolute certainty that cannot be taught or purchased and said, "This is real and you know it is. Do not let anything or anyone, including Thomas, including his feelings, including your own second-guessing, take you out of what is real. Go after her. Properly. Fully. True love does not have borders, and it does not come with conditions, and it does not ask you to be less than what you are. Go." Brenda's other world was the dance studio. She had danced since she was 7 years old, and the studio was the place where she was most herself. Not the most presentable version of herself, but the most essential one. She moved through a stretching routine at the bar in a fitted black sports bra and high-waisted black leggings. The studio mirrors giving her back her own image from every angle, the overhead spotlights making her luminous. She was thinking about Sanjay. She had been thinking about Sanjay with considerable frequency. She was choosing to interpret this as an information problem rather than a feelings problem, which was a distinction she was maintaining with decreasing success. She heard the door. She turned from the bar, and through the studio's glass door she saw him. Forest green bomber jacket over a white tee. Dark jeans. His face. And in his arms, almost comically large, a bouquet of deep red roses that he was holding with the calm self-possession of a man who had made a decision and was executing it. She went completely still. She met him at the door. He handed her the roses with no preamble, no speech prepared. Just the flowers and his eyes. She took them. The stems were thick and the blooms were full and deep, and the scent hit her immediately. She pressed them to her chest and looked at him over the flowers with an expression that she had not prepared and could not adjust in time. An expression of pure surprise, genuine emotion that lived in a place below social management. The door opened again. Thomas. He filled the doorway in his deep navy-fitted turtleneck and dark trousers with the composed authority of a man who went everywhere with the quiet understanding that he belonged there. His dark eyes swept the room with the precision of long habit and landed on the two of them. On Sanjay, on Brenda with the roses pressed to her chest, on the intimate atmosphere of the moment he had interrupted. His expression did not crack. He was too controlled for that. But Brenda felt the shift in the air and stepped almost imperceptibly closer to Sanjay, which is one of those small unconscious body language choices that tells you everything about where a person's allegiance already lives. In the corridor outside the studio, they faced each other. 8 years of friendship between them, and the comfortable history of men who had seen each other through many things. No raised voices. No ugliness. Thomas spoke carefully and directly. He said what he had come to say. Sanjay listened completely. And then Sanjay spoke. With the steady composure of a man who has arrived at a place of complete clarity, and has no need to defend it, only state it. He was not aggressive. He was not dismissive of Thomas's feelings. He simply told the truth, about what he felt, about what was happening, about what he intended, and about the fact that he was going to continue on the path he was on regardless of what anyone thought of it. Thomas walked away down the corridor. His shoulders were straight. His step was measured and clean. He was a man of pride and he would not spend it in the wrong direction. He walked away from that corridor with the quiet dignity of someone who has chosen to let a thing go before it costs him something he cannot recover. It was one of the most dignified things he ever did, and no one would ever give him credit for it. Brenda asked him what had happened in the corridor with her arms crossed and her eyes steady and her expression saying clearly that she expected and required honesty. She held the roses against her hip. The studio lights were warm around her. Sean J. placed both hands gently on her shoulders and told her the truth. All of it. Thomas's feelings. The dynamic. The conversation. His own clarity about what he wanted. He left nothing out and added nothing to it. She listened without interrupting. She watched his face the whole time. Something in her face moved. Thomas is your brother, and he will be fine because he is strong and he knows what is right. And what is right is that you go forward. You don't shrink. You don't apologize for feeling what is real. True love, the real kind, not the convenient kind, does not come with your permission. It arrives. And when it arrives in the form of someone like Brenda, you show up for it with everything you have. That night, Brenda sat on her sofa in champagne loungewear with the red roses in a vase beside her, and her phone face up in her lap, and the most private smile on her face, the kind that belongs to no one else. The kind that is only for you and whatever you feel in the quiet parts of yourself. He sent her a voice message. She listened to it 3 times. The 3rd time she listened with her eyes closed. He had not traveled for pleasure in 2 years. He had traveled for work, smooth, efficient, hotel rooms that blurred into each other, cities that offered themselves up as backdrops for meetings and meals and morning runs and nothing more. He had not traveled with the specific intention of being fully alive in a place with someone who made him want to be fully alive. On a Tuesday night, with a single candle burning on his home office desk and the Atlanta skyline quiet through the window behind him, Sean J. opened his laptop and began planning something that was not a work trip. Miami appeared on the screen in full golden hour glory, and he leaned forward with both hands on the keyboard and felt something like anticipation. The real kind, the kind that moves differently in the body than ambition. He called Marcus. Marcus's reaction to the words, "I'm planning a trip to Miami for the 3 of us," was the kind of reaction that is best described as physical. He stood up off his leather couch. He fist-pumped. He did not attempt to modulate this response. Restraint in the face of genuinely exciting news was not one of Marcus's practiced disciplines, and frankly it was one of the things Sean J. loved most about him. Thomas was also invited. This was Sean J. being the man he was, generous with the people he cared about, even when it was complicated. He brought Thomas into the group call with the directness and warmth of someone who believed that complications were workable, and that friendship was worth the work. Thomas listened. Thomas nodded. Thomas gave the controlled smile of a man who was choosing, moment by moment, to be his best self. He asked Brenda over coffee. He slid the printed travel itinerary folder across the table toward her in the Artisan Cafe, she in her coral orange sleeveless turtleneck bodysuit and high-waisted white flares, her short finger-wave pixie haircut and luminous brown skin perfect under the warm light. And he watched her face as she looked at the folder without touching it for 3 full seconds. She opened it. He watched her face move through the pages. Surprise, then something bigger than surprise, then the beginning of the smile she was trying very hard to contain. He had planned the entire itinerary. Every detail. Not just hotel reservations and flight times but things he had thought about specifically. The rooftop she would love, the beach access at golden hour, the Art Deco architecture walk she had mentioned once in passing on their river walk. He had been listening. He had been listening to everything. She looked up at him from the folder and across the small cafe table, and then she said yes. The word came out simply and completely, without hedge or condition. Yes. And Sean J's face opened into the largest, most uncontained, most completely genuine smile she had seen on him, and it was so different from his usual composed warmth that it took her breath away slightly, which she managed not to show. Packing for Miami was an event. Brenda stood over her suitcase in her yellow cropped sweatshirt and black bike shorts and deliberated over fabrics and silhouettes and colors with the focused strategic energy of a woman who understood that being somewhere beautiful with someone who saw her required looking exactly like herself, which is to say breathtaking. She held up the rust orange halter sundress. She held up the emerald satin dress. She held up the red bikini, the white sundress, the gold bikini. She put them all in. Thomas packed precisely. One carry-on. Folded perfectly. A glass of whiskey on the nightstand, and the evening light long and blue through his window. He packed without drama or excessive deliberation, because he had decided to go and he was going and that was that. Thomas was a man who once a decision was made it completely. He had decided to be a good man about this situation. He was going to be a good man about this situation. He zipped the carry-on with quiet finality. Marcus packed with the energy of someone who had never packed carefully in his life, and found the whole concept of editing down a suitcase deeply philosophically questionable. He threw in everything. He danced to music. He was delighted with himself and his process. He would spend the next 48 hours in Miami pulling things out of an overstuffed bag and finding the whole situation very funny. The Atlanta airport on a Thursday morning, all four of them in the departures hall with their carry-ons. The overhead light clean and cool and full of possibility. Brenda in her nude tan-ribbed crop hoodie and flare jogger set. Her short finger wave pixie haircut immaculate. Brown skin luminous even under fluorescent airport light. Sean J beside her in dark olive travel jacket and joggers. Their carry-ons rolling in unison. Marcus ahead of them, already somehow the most comfortable person in the building. Thomas behind, composed and watchful and choosing, every minute, to be generous with the moment. At the check-in counter, Sean J handled both passports. He didn't ask. He simply took care of it, with the natural ease of a man for whom taking care of the people he loves is not a transaction but a reflex. Brenda watched him do it and something quiet moved through her. Not the grateful surprise of someone unaccustomed to being cared for, but the more complicated, deeper feeling of someone who had been waiting a long time to be cared for in exactly this way. Thomas, a few feet away, watched their easy closeness and looked deliberately toward the departure boards. Marcus returned from the terminal food concourse, carrying approximately 9 items that no airport trip requires. Distributed them to everyone with the energy of a man who considers feeding his people a fundamental act of love, and settled into his departure gate seat with 3 drinks and complete satisfaction. On the plane, first class, Sean J and Brenda sat side by side in the wide cream seats with the whole flight ahead of them. His phone between them as he walked her through the Miami itinerary, her face beside his catching the soft cabin light. Somewhere over Georgia, she fell asleep on his shoulder. Not the managed semi-asleep of someone still performing composure, but the real kind. Her weight fully surrendered to his shoulder, her short finger wave pixie haircut against his jaw, her breathing slow and even. He looked down at her for a long time. His expression was completely private and completely open simultaneously. The face of a man who has stopped managing how he feels because there is no longer any point in managing it. He covered her hand gently with his. He did not move. He did not need to. Across the aisle, Thomas opened his eyes from a half-sleep and saw them. Just for a moment. He looked at Sean J and Brenda in their quiet closeness, and he felt the last of the resistance leave him. Not with bitterness. With something more honest than bitterness. With the clean quiet of a man who has looked at the truth directly and decided that the truth, though it costs something, is better than anything he could have built on the alternative. He closed his eyes again. Through the first-class window, Miami appeared. The coastline. The turquoise Atlantic. The white sand of South Beach catching the golden hour in a blaze of light. Brenda stirred on Sean J's shoulder and opened her eyes and looked out the window at the city below, and her first waking expression at the sight of it. That golden coast, that blazing water, that entire beautiful possibility of the next few days, was the most alive, most open, most purely joyful expression. He was already watching when she turned from the window to look at him. He smiled. She smiled. Miami blazed below them. Miami received them in golden hour, as if the city had planned its best light specifically for their arrival. The hotel was white and Art Deco and grand, with tropical palms and a fountain, and the Atlantic visible between the hotel wings like a beautiful secret. The black SUV pulled to the valet circle and Sean J stepped out first, and then held out his hand for Brenda. And she stepped out of the car in her off-white linen wrap dress into the full force of the Miami golden light, and the city simply absorbed her because she was as beautiful as anything in it. The penthouse suite was everything the Miami promise had implied, and then more. Floor-to-ceiling windows. The Atlantic Ocean extending endlessly beyond the glass. A private balcony with a plunge pool. The kind of room that makes a person understand that beauty, when it is experienced fully and without apology, is not indulgence but necessity. Brenda walked to the windows in her wrap dress and looked out at the ocean. and turned back to Sanjay with an expression of pure wonder that was so unguarded and so real that he couldn't help but laugh quietly from where he stood. She stood at the balcony railing in her gold metallic bikini with the sheer white sarong tied at her hip, and looked at the Atlantic like she was renewing an old acquaintance. The Miami sun was full and warm and completely unambiguous about what it found beautiful. Her brown skin glowed under it. Her short finger wave pixie haircut moved slightly in the ocean breeze. The turquoise water stretched below and ahead and beyond, and she looked at it with the quiet peace of a woman who has arrived somewhere she was meant to arrive. He came out with 2 cocktails. White linen shirt, 2 buttons open, navy linen shorts, his silver bracelet catching the Miami sun. He handed her a glass and stood beside her at the railing, and they both looked at the ocean together in easy silence, the kind of silence that has its own quality and color and doesn't require filling. And after a moment she tilted her glass slightly toward his, and he touched it with his own. South Beach at golden hour, barefoot at the water's edge. The Atlantic warm around their feet. Brenda in her coral red string bikini and flowing sheer cover-up. Her curvy figure and luminous brown skin breathtaking in the full sun. Sanjay in navy swim trunks and open linen, light complexion warm and glowing. They walked slowly. They always walked slowly when they were together, as if both of them understood instinctively that hurrying through time with the other person was a kind of waste. Marcus had already colonized a luxury beach lounger with 3 drinks, a bucket hat, and the complete behavioral ease of a man who had been to Miami 100 times in his imagination, and was finally here in his body and found the two to be a perfect match. He waved at Sanjay and Brenda from across the sand with the enormous enthusiastic wave of someone who is far too happy to modulate their public displays of it. Brenda laughed. Sanjay shook his head. This was Marcus, exactly and completely. Thomas sat alone at the open-air beach bar in his dark slate linen shirt, and nursed a cocktail, and watched the ocean. He was not brooding, not exactly. He was doing something quieter and more purposeful than brooding. He was recalibrating. He was the kind of man who could not go from one emotional position to another without giving the transition the proper weight and duration. He was not rushing it. He was sitting with it, letting the Miami light and the sound of the ocean work on him, letting the thing he had been carrying loosen its weight slowly. They swam. The Atlantic received them warm and clear, and the water caught the sunlight in 1,000 moving fragments around them. Brenda's coral bikini was stunning in the surf. Her short finger wave pixie haircut was now water-kissed and glinting. She laughed when a wave hit her from an unexpected angle. Sanjay reached for her automatically, both of them grabbing for each other's arms in the surf, and held on. And then he lifted her. Completely effortlessly, his arms under her, lifting her out of the water as a wave came in, and she wrapped her arms around his neck and laughed freely and fully, her head back, the Miami sun all over her, the ocean sparkling around them. He laughed too. And in that moment, in the warm turquoise water of the Atlantic with the Miami sky above and the city behind and nothing but ocean ahead, something became undeniable that had perhaps always been inevitable. The rooftop restaurant at Golden Sunset Hour was the kind of setting that makes everything feel like a declaration. The 4 of them at the round table, the Atlantic blazing below, the Miami skyline in pink and gold, Brenda in the deep burgundy halter-neck satin midi dress, the color against her brown skin extraordinary in the fading light, Sanjay in all black, Marcus resplendent in white, Thomas in deep charcoal, composed and quietly easier than he had been. It happened over the appetizers. Thomas leaned across the table toward Brenda with his most practiced elegance, and said something designed to be charming, spoken quietly enough to be private. Brenda received it with polite confusion and a slight lean backward that was entirely instinctual and entirely telling. Beside her, Sanjay's jaw tightened by the smallest possible increment. And then Brenda's shoulder found Sanjay's shoulder. The lightest possible touch. The most deliberate possible gesture. She did not look at Thomas when she made it. She simply leaned, and the lean said everything that words in that setting were too blunt an instrument to say. Sanjay's whole body relaxed. Marcus turned the conversation. With the cheerful surgical precision of a man who had anticipated this possibility and prepared a redirect, he pulled Thomas into a different conversation on the other side of the table with complete naturalness and zero acknowledgement of what he was doing. Thomas received the redirect with the composure of a man who understood it for what it was, and chose to accept it gracefully. He turned away from Brenda and engaged Marcus, and the rooftop dinner continued. Late that night, just the two of them on the dark beach, the moon full and silver over the Atlantic. Brenda in the flowing off-shoulder white maxi dress, the fabric moving in the warm Miami night air. Sanjay in black linen and a white tee, their hands fully interlaced, walking the water's edge in the moonlight. They stopped. They faced each other. He held both her hands in both of his, and told her how he felt with the unguarded, complete honesty of a man who had made his decision, and was done managing the timing of its expression. He told her she was unlike anyone he had known. He told her that what he felt was real and it was not complicated. It was simply real, and he was asking her if she felt it too. Brenda looked at him in the moonlight for a long, steady moment. Then she stepped forward and put her arms around his neck, and pressed her forehead to his. Their first real kiss happened on the Miami beach in full moonlight with the Atlantic behind them. It was slow and certain and warm and completely without pretense. The kind of kiss that is not a question but an answer. Her hands behind his neck, his at her waist, the white dress and the white tee both catching the silver light, and the ocean beside them as a witness. Several floors above, on his hotel balcony, Marcus raised his glass toward the beach below where the two of them stood together in the moonlight. He said nothing. The grin said everything. He toasted the universe for being intelligent enough to arrange things correctly. Thomas stood at his balcony door in the dark and looked at the ocean from a distance. The sound of the waves, the warm night air, a half-empty glass of whiskey on the table beside him. He stood there for a long time in the clean quiet of a man completing something inside himself. Not grief exactly, not peace yet exactly. Something honest, and in between that required the Miami night air, and the sound of the water and his own company to move through properly. He did not begrudge Sanjay this. He could not. He knew Sanjay too well. And he had watched Brenda long enough to know that whoever was going to love her was going to have to be a man who showed up completely. Thomas had not shown up. Sanjay had shown up and kept showing up. That distinction was not one Thomas could argue with. He finished his drink. He went inside. He slept. Miami mornings have a particular quality. The light softer and pinker than Atlanta. The air already warm before 8 o'clock. The ocean audible from everywhere as a kind of constant gorgeous reassurance. Brenda stood at the penthouse balcony railing with her coffee in both hands and her champagne silk robe moving gently in the breeze, and she did not try to manage what she was feeling. She simply felt it. The full warmth of the previous night, the moonlight, the beach, the kiss, the truth of what she had acknowledged in returning it. She stood in the Miami morning and let herself feel it, and it was very good. Sanjay came out with 2 espresso cups. He didn't say much. He put 1 cup beside her and stood beside her at the railing, and they looked at the pink-lit Atlantic together in the morning quiet, and both of them understood that something had shifted from temporary to permanent in the night before. Thomas knocked on the suite door at 9 in the morning. Sanjay opened it, and they looked at each other across the threshold, and Thomas said, "Can we talk?" Inside, in the suite sitting area with the Miami morning bright through the balcony glass, they sat across from each other, and Thomas said what he had spent the night distilling into its most honest and cleanest form. He said that he had felt something for Brenda. He said he was not going to pretend otherwise because pretending was beneath both of them. He said that Sanjay had done something that Thomas himself had not. He had gone to her. He had shown up. He had kept showing up. And whatever Thomas had felt was made of something different from what Sanjay had built. And he knew the difference between the two. He extended his hand. Sanjay gripped it firmly. 8 years of friendship had survived something that could have broken it. And it had survived because both men were big enough to let it. Marcus was somehow already in the hallway when Sanjay emerged from the conversation. Standing against the wall in his fresh yellow polo with his arms crossed and his grin in full deployment, like a man who had absolute foreknowledge of positive outcomes and found this confirmation entirely satisfying. Sanjay shook his head at his best friend and Marcus spread his arms wide. Breakfast at the hotel's poolside terrace was the first meal that felt completely uncomplicated. The tropical spread, the Miami sun. All 4 of them in the morning warmth with the pool shimmering beyond the railing. Thomas's smile reached his eyes for the first time in days. Marcus raised his orange juice glass and delivered a toast that was equal parts comedy and gospel, and both equally sincere. The Art Deco district in the morning is one of Miami's most quietly extraordinary gifts. The pastel facades, the symmetry, the way the golden light falls at that hour against the old geometric stonework. Sean J. and Brenda walked hand in hand past the storefronts while Marcus and Thomas fell into genuine companionable conversation behind them. And for a few blocks the four of them existed as exactly what they were. People who cared about each other, in a beautiful place, on a good morning. Brenda found a slim silver bracelet in a boutique, and bought it before Sean J. could see what she was doing, and slid it onto his wrist while he watched with quiet surprised pleasure. Now both of them wore something the other had placed on them. The symbolism was not lost on either of them. The pool that afternoon was jubilant and loud, and exactly right. Brenda in her royal blue one-piece in the water, throwing her head back with free gorgeous laughter, and Sean J. launching himself off the edge in a tremendous splash that soaked her and had her screaming with laughter, and Marcus's cannonball that followed approximately 4 seconds later, achieving a level of impact that impressed everyone present. Thomas sat at the poolside lounger in his linen shirt and swim trunks and watched his friends and laughed and drank his cocktail. And for the first time on this trip was fully present rather than managing his way through being present. He was simply there, in the Miami afternoon sun, with the people he loved. The private yacht at sunset was Sean J.'s final Miami surprise, and Miami's golden hour obliged with the particular magnificence that only exists in certain latitudes at certain times of year. The whole sky blazing in orange and deep pink and gold, the water turned to hammered bronze, the city skyline a silhouette against the burning horizon. Brenda stood at the yacht's bow in her rust-orange halter sundress with Sean J.'s arm around her waist, and looked at the horizon, and felt the entirety of the week move through her in one long warm exhalation. She turned to him. He turned to her. The second kiss was nothing like the first, not tentative, not a discovery. This one was a confirmation. This one was simply the consequence of two people who already knew. Behind them at the stern, Marcus and Thomas clinked champagne flutes in a toast over the blazing water. Two men on opposite sides of the same story, having arrived somewhere better than either of them had traveled toward. Marcus toasted the sky. Thomas toasted the horizon. Both of them meant the same thing. Atlanta received them back on a Thursday afternoon with its characteristic refusal to be less beautiful than anything. The arrivals terminal, the familiar Georgia light, the particular feeling of returning to a city that has become home not just because you live there but because the people you love are in it. All four of them walked through arrivals together, carry-ons rolling, Brenda in her caramel brown airport set with her short finger wave pixie haircut immaculate even after the journey, Sean J. beside her with his hand finding her lower back as they moved through the crowd. They were different people than the ones who had arrived at the departure hall 4 days earlier. Miami had done its work. She unpacked her suitcase slowly, in no hurry to return from the trip even in this small material way. She pulled out the rust-orange halter sundress and held it against herself at the mirror, and the smell of Miami was still in the fabric, sunscreen and salt air and warm nights. And she held it and the memory held her back. Sean J. sat on his sofa in the Atlanta afternoon, and looked at the silver bracelet on his wrist, and felt Brenda in his apartment even though she wasn't there. She was everywhere, in the particular way that people who have become important to us colonize our ordinary spaces. She was in the way the afternoon light fell. She was in the coffee cup on the counter. She was in the song that was playing. He called her. She picked up before the second ring. They went out as a couple. Not performatively, there was no announcement, no dramatic public debut, but simply naturally, as people who have stopped pretending the thing between them is casual, and have moved into the comfortable territory of being two people who go places together. A restaurant. Her arm through his hand finding hers across the table, the room noticing and neither of them particularly caring what the room noticed. He tried to teach her a Korean dish, and the attempt was sincere, and the result was debatable, and they laughed about the entire process for an hour in his kitchen. The warm light and the sound of the two of them together filling his apartment with something it had never had before. She taught him to dance in his living room, holding his hands and guiding his feet with considerable patience and equal laughter, and he concentrated with exaggerated earnest commitment, and failed so entertainingly that she couldn't stay upright with laughing. His apartment, which had always been beautiful and always been clean and had always been, underneath the beauty and cleanliness, quietly empty in the specific way that well-designed spaces can be empty. His apartment was no longer empty. Sunday mornings, farmers' markets, his world and her world offered to each other with equal pride and equal curiosity. He took her to the Korean Cultural Gallery and spoke about it with the warmth of a man sharing something he had carried from home. She took him to the soul food restaurant in her neighborhood and spoke about its history with the love of a woman rooted in something deep and beautiful, both of them learning each other's languages, not just the spoken ones. Her best friend heard the full story and her reaction was so enthusiastic and so completely supportive that Brenda laughed and also felt genuinely grateful. Marcus told Sean-jae on his leather couch, "It's time. Make it official. Not because the timing is right. The timing is always right when the person is right. Do it." Thomas called. Sean-jae answered, not knowing what to expect. Thomas said, "She is extraordinary. You chose well. Or she chose you. Either way, you are a lucky man and I think you know it. Go be worthy of it." Sean-jae sat for a moment after the call ended holding the phone. Then he set it down. He had not expected that degree of grace from Thomas, and he felt it exactly for what it was, a generous and costly and deeply honorable gift. He planned something, not grand theater. He was not a man of unnecessary theater, but something beautiful and intentional, because Brenda deserved to know that the things he felt had weight and permanence, and not just the warmth of impulse. The Atlanta rooftop. Candles in crystal holders. Rose petals in a path. Champagne. Fairy lights between the columns. The city skyline blazing in the sunset behind it all. He wore deep navy blue. He stood in the center of the candlelight and waited. When she stepped through the rooftop door in the strapless black satin gown and saw it, she stopped moving. The full force of what he had done, the thought behind it, the care behind it, the fact of it, hit her in one warm complete wave, and she stood in the doorway for 2 full seconds before walking forward along the rose petal path toward him. He took her hands at the center. The light through the window is the same Atlanta light and is somehow more beautiful. Marcus got the text and stood up off his couch and pointed at his phone with a grin wide enough to be seen from the next room. He had known. He had always known. He had known in the club when Sean-jae went still across the dance floor. He had known in the mall atrium when he pushed Sean-jae forward. He had known on the yacht in the Miami golden hour. He had been watching this story build from the first frame, and it had arrived exactly where he believed it would arrive. Thomas read the message in the quiet of his apartment kitchen with the city morning coming through the window, and he smiled, a real, quiet, genuine smile, and set his phone face down on the marble counter, and picked up his coffee and stood with it for a moment. The smile stayed. They took their first photo as an official couple in the afternoon light of the Atlanta apartment window, both dressed in matching deep teal, her off-shoulder silk top and his linen shirt, her hand on his chest and his arm around her waist, both of them looking at the camera with the natural ease of people who have nothing left to manage. The photo captured something essential, not just their beauty, though they were extraordinarily beautiful together, his light complexion and sharp Korean features beside her luminous brown skin and spectacular face, but the ease, the specific irreplaceable ease of two people who have arrived at each other. The three men sat together in Marcus's apartment, and existed in the particular atmosphere that follows the resolution of a complicated chapter. Lighter, more honest. Marcus in his burgundy polo with his satisfaction written openly across his entire face. Sean-jae in sage green with the quiet settled happiness of a man whose life has taken the shape he hoped for. Thomas in stone gray with the composed dignity of a man who has moved through something hard and arrived somewhere genuinely good. Marcus stood up and delivered a speech that covered the entire arc of the story from the nightclub to the rooftop, with the particular verbal genius of a man who was simultaneously its most enthusiastic narrator and one of its most essential architects. He roasted Thomas affectionately. He roasted Sean-jae even more affectionately. He praised Brenda extensively and sincerely. He talked about true love with the certainty of a man who had always believed in it, and had been given, over the last several weeks, significant additional evidence in its favor. Both Sean-jae and Thomas laughed until they ran out of the capacity to laugh, and then laughed some more. They went to the farmer's market on Saturday morning. They walked through it with their shared basket and the same ease they had been building since the first coffee and the mall parking garage. And people looked at them the way people look at things that are simply beautiful. Not with envy but with the particular quiet joy that beautiful things produce in good people. He showed her more of his Korean world, and she received every part of it with genuine curiosity and warmth. She showed him more of hers, and he listened to her talk about it with the attention of a man for whom the things that matter to her have become the things that matter to him. He called his Korean family from his kitchen counter with Brenda beside him, and when he introduced her on the video call, the warmth that came through the screen from Seoul was immediate and real. His mother smiled at her with the specific smile of a mother who can see that her son has found something good. His grandmother said something in Korean that Sean Jae translated afterward as approximately, "She is beautiful and you look happy." Brenda held it together admirably for the duration of the call, and then sat with both hands pressed to her chest when it ended. He took her to Paris. Because Paris in the autumn is one of the world's great arguments for the existence of beauty, and he wanted to make that argument to her specifically. They walked the Seine in the golden hour with the Eiffel Tower in the haze of the evening. They stood beneath the tower and looked up at it together. They took a boat along the river with Paris's illuminated bridges reflected in the dark water. They sat in a sidewalk cafe in the morning with café au lait and the cobblestones golden outside. She wore the emerald turtleneck dress that echoed the emerald satin from Atlanta. He wore his camel overcoat over a cream turtleneck. Paris accepted them as it accepts all beautiful things, without excessive fuss, simply as a matter of course. Back in Atlanta, a celebration dinner. All four of them. The round table, the candles, the flowers. Brenda in the all-white asymmetric gown, breathtaking in a way that had by now stopped surprising people, and simply remained extraordinary regardless of the number of times it occurred. Sean Jae in all white beside her. Marcus in deep green velvet. Thomas in charcoal. Crystal flutes of champagne. Marcus stood and raised his glass and delivered the official toast with everything he had. He talked about a nightclub in Atlanta on a Friday night. He talked about a woman in a midnight blue sequin dress stepping out of an Uber. He talked about a man going still across a dance floor. He talked about mall atriums and coffee shops and dance studios with rose bouquets. He talked about Miami beaches and moonlight. He talked about Atlanta rooftops and candlelight and rose petals. He talked about the truth that love does not check for permission before it arrives, and does not ask whether it is convenient, and does not concern itself with the geography of origin or the complexity of circumstances. He said, "It shows up. And if you're paying attention, if you're brave enough to show up for it in return, it stays." He raised his glass. To Sean Jae and Brenda. To what was always going to happen. To what happened beautifully. Thomas raised his glass with a quiet smile that had traveled a long way to arrive where it now lived. Past want, past loss, past the complicated grace required of a man who loves someone enough to want their happiness more than he wants his own proximity to them. He raised the glass and meant it completely. They danced at the restaurant, slowly, in each other's arms, not for anyone watching, not for the room, but for the simple and irreplaceable pleasure of being exactly where they were with exactly the person they were with. Her all-white gown flowing, his arm around her waist, her hand on his shoulder, both of them looking at each other. Later, on a rooftop with the Atlanta skyline blazing in all its gold and white magnificence before them, all four of them stood at the railing together. Sean Jae and Brenda at the center in white, Marcus in green to one side with his arm raised, always gesturing, always alive. Thomas in charcoal to the other, composed and present and genuinely at peace. For people who had traveled through something real, and arrived somewhere better than any of them had planned. The Atlanta night blazed ahead of them. The story complete. The love true. The city a blazing crown around a beginning that had already become everything. He had gone to her across a dance floor and asked for nothing except her attention, and she had given him her hand, and that hand had led them both somewhere neither of them had been before, and both of them had always been moving toward. He never paid her to dance. He never needed to. She had always been dancing toward him.